scratch. So they developed painting on leather, they developed painting on paper, they developed painting on various other material till modern times, then painting with brush, then using colors, different kinds of colors depending upon where you live and where you can make the color. So the science or the art develops slowly and becomes a very complicated art. It begins in a simple way. How did theater or dance or drama, because Natya is all this, so how did Natya begin? What is the earliest record we have? In writing, in description, recorded as to where does it come from? Because something comes from something else. Just as a rock is given to you and a stone is given to you, and you scratch the rock surface with a stone, make lines, that is the simplest. Similarly, what was the simple form from which theater or Natya developed? And the record that we have is that it was something which came out of the Vedic Yajna. What was the Vedic Yajna? The Vedic Yajna was when people sat down, they lit a fire, they invited the gods, they sang the mantras, they recited the mantras, then they made offerings into the fire. The offering burnt up and went into the sky, and they believe that it has reached the gods and goddesses to whom it is being given. Right? In simplest way, this was Yajna. Then when they made the oblations, they went round, they made all kinds of gestures, they wore different kinds of clothes, they spoke or recited mantras. Yesterday I explained to you the definition between speaking, recitation and singing. I gave you a demonstration of all these three. So the mantras were recited, and then the mantras were sung. When they were recited, that is called Rikpat. That is called Pat. And when they are sung, then it is called Gana, Samagana. So when they are recited in 7 notes, it is Samagan. When they are recited in 3 notes, then it is Pat, Rikpat or Yajush Pat. Pat means only 3 ways of recitation. But Gan is 7 notes, so it becomes closer to music. And then, when for a little while the yajna stopped, or there was an interval, because sometimes yajnas were long, they went on for a whole day or several days or whatever, then to keep the people, the whole assembly around, to give them something meaningful, there were singing. And it was also singing about gods and goddesses, and those were called Dhruva Gana. Dhruva means in which the swara and the text is fixed, and the tal is also fixed. It is like a kriti. In a kriti, the notation is fixed. It's not that I sing a kriti of Tyagaraja in one way and somebody else sings it with another notation. No, it doesn't happen. It is fixed. So Dhruva means that there were songs which were sung in praise of other gods and goddesses for entertainment. Now, when this kind of practice was available to people for doing yajna, then people took different aspects of this art of yajna and made it into theatre. Yajna is for worship. It is for reaching the gods, asking them for a favor, doing a ceremony for spiritual upliftment. So it was a religious rite. But in that also there was movement. Then there was song. And there was also the word, the spoken word. And this whole thing combined into give a great benefit from the gods to the worshippers. So these different elements were taken and combined into a new art which was called Natya. Right? Does it make sense? For instance, the verses or the mantras of Rig Veda are called Rig or Richa, right? And they are recited in 3 tones. Pavakana Saraswati Vajibhir. This way, just 3 tones. But you have the mantra or the text or the what you call now kriti or the composition, or what you call vak or vachanam, the text. Something which is composed as words from dictionary. So you have that. So when you take literature or words, part, because you need part in theatre, you speak a dialogue. So you need words, you need a sequence of words, you need sentences. So part was taken from Rig Veda. That's why there is a verse in Natyashastra which says Jagraha Pathyam Rig Veda. From Rig Veda they took Pathya, the art of Pathya, not the mantras, but text. That there should be a text in theatre. Something has to be written. Because you speak a text in theatre. Like when Dushyanta meets Shakuntala, then he says, "Are you well? Are you doing spiritual upliftment? Api tapo vardhate." You are in an ashram, so you are practicing tapa. So, he uses this line, he uses words, he uses pathya. This is called path or pathya. Pathya is taken from Rig Veda. Then Geet or singing is taken from Samved, because Samved has more than 3 notes. And movement is taken from Yajushved. That is how to move around in the fire when the Ritviks or the priests, they perform different actions. So movement of the body. Angika. In Abhinay, the first activity is Angika. It is through the body because it's most effective. Angik is very effective. Suppose if I go to my teacher and I say, Namaste Ji, but then if I do like this, or if I go down on the floor and do Sashtanga Pranam with all my body, then that is more effective. Isn't it? It's more communicative. Because the Angik communicates your feeling most powerfully. Vachik less, but Angik more. It's natural. So this Angik movement was taken from the activity of Veda Yajna, which was prescribed according to the rituals given in Yajurveda. So the two things, Angik and Vachik from Rigveda, Angik, and then they took Jagraha Pathyam Rigveda, they took Gita from Sam, and they took movement or Angikam from Yajurveda, and from Atharva Ved they took Rasa. Rasa means the result of everything put together. You make lots of food, you prepare it very carefully, then you serve it, and then you eat it, you chew it, and finally you experience the taste of it. So that is the last stage of all activity. Because rasa is described in Yajurveda in the context of medicine. Because medicine is something which revives your body. So all these things are practical. Many people will come around and tell you, no, this is all, trying to elevate Brahmins, and this is all trying to talk very highly of tradition, and there is no substance to it. But the fact is something else. I have given you practically how it comes from the Vedic ritual. It's not a cooked up thing. It's not a glorification of Veda. It's absolutely practical. Because how to preserve the text was the great science practiced to preserve the Rig Veda. So how to preserve the words in the mantras. Then how to practice music, all the 7 notes, and then to take it further. That is again from Samagan. So it's practically there. Similarly, the movement, gestural movements which are ceremonial. Later on, this whole thing will develop into Natya Dharmi. You will see the whole doctrine of Natya Dharmi will come out of it. So, Veda ritual, Veda Yajna is an activity from which elements of theatre or Natya or performance were practically drawn. And then there were Dhruvagans and singing and playing of the Veena and all these things which later on were part of the Vedic ritual, and they all contributed to the making of theatre. So, the Natya Shastra gives an account of how various techniques were taken from earlier practices and developed into the art of theatre. Natya Shastra is the first text which gives you a clear account of this development, a practical account of this development. Similarly, Natya Shastra also gives a very clear account of making the murti. What is a murti? What is a vigraha? Idol. Many people use the word idol for it. That is idol in stone or idol in wood or idol in some other material. But it is called vigraha also. Vigraha means something which is captured, something which is taken. But it is an idol of what? It is an idol of a devata, a god or a goddess. Either it is a devi or it is a devata. So, in Vedic times there were many devatas: Indra, Upendra, Rudra, right? Saraswati, etc. So many of them. Now, if you go to the 4th chapter of the Natya Shastra, then they describe as to how the form of a devata was brought onto the stage. How is it that a devata's form is brought on the stage? You see, in the Vedic Yajnas, the devatas were given the oblation, the have, and through fire it reached them. But in theatre, they showed that how could that devata be given a bodily form? Who has a body? Living things have a body. Animals have a body, mosquitoes, birds, keet, patang, all these have a body, and we have a body. So, as we have best control on our body, and we can do many things with our body, and we can't make others do, I mean animals do the same things, we can do those things. So, we bring the devata into our body. What is this bringing the devata into your body? It's not like having a visitation, or it is not something like theyam, right? It is representing the very form of, let us say, Ganesha or Shiva or Devi through your body. And that art was called Pindi Bandha. You see, in the 4th chapter of Natya Shastra, it is very clearly given that Maheshwara, Shiva, asked his disciple Tandu, have you heard this story or not? No, you have not. Because I don't think there is much teaching of Natya Shastra here, but you should read about it. As I told you yesterday, there are 53 lectures of mine on my YouTube channel, and you will get a detailed description in English. Then there are many other lectures in Hindi also. So you'll get a detailed description of them. It's all free. You just subscribe and see the information given there. So In the fourth chapter of Natya Shastra, it is shown how does dance come into activity. Because the fourth chapter is the beginning of dance. The fourth chapter of Natya Shastra is about how dance came into existence. So when Bharat Muni goes to Shiva and shows him his performance of theatre, natak, natya, he says, well, this is good, fine, but it does not have dance. You should include a lot of dance in it. So as dancers, you must understand this. And you must read the fourth chapter of Natya Shastra thoroughly and understand how dance was used and how dance became significantly included in theatre. And it is from there that you are preserving this whole art of Bharatanatyam. So this is the beginning of the art of dance. The art of dance has many names, Odissi, Bharatanatyam, this, that, all over the world there are different names. But the very concept of what is dance, it is given there. So what is given? Bharat Muni asks, how shall I make my presentation better? And Shiva says, include dance. He calls Tandu. Tandu is the disciple. And the education of Tandu is called Tandav. Yesterday there was a question about men dancing and women dancing, and somebody was under the illusion that there is no prescription or suggestion about male dancing. Then I said and explained that movement is the same. When it is done vigorously, then it is like male dancing. When it is done softly, then it is female dancing or lasya. But this education or this whole grammar, the system of dance is explained by Tandu. And Tandu says that, look, I am going to teach you what are the dance postures. How do you dance? So he is going to show Bharat Muni that there is, first of all, something called Karana. Karanas combine and they become Angaharas. What is Karana? Hastapada samayogo nrittasya karanam bhavet. You hold the hands and the body in a particular combination. That is called Karana. Then it's not just one posture which will make dance. You need thousands of them. So when you combine them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then they become an Angahara. But you don't keep your hands still or your legs still. You move them. And the movements of hand is called Rechakas. The movement of your belly is another kind of Rechakas. So movement of different parts of the body is called Rechakas. So Karana become Angahara, Rechaka, and the third thing that he teaches is called Pindi Bandha. Now you must listen and understand this. There is a massive confusion among Indian dancers about this word Pindi Bandha. And very great scholars have made a big mistake about defining what is Pindi Bandha. Does anybody know what is a Pindi Bandha? Does anybody in the students or in the faculty, आपको किसी को पिंडी बंध क्या है बताया गया है? हाँ, खड़े हो जाइए सर. हाँ, बोलिए जोर से. Okay, sit down. So this is the wrong answer. This is prevalent all over India from north to south, east to west for last maybe 50 or 100 years. That Pindi Bandh is a group formation. Very often when Westerners say, oh, you Indians do only solo dancing, there is no group dancing. Then many Indians say, no, we have group dancing, it is called Pindi Bandha. This is not Pindi Bandha. That comes later. Pindi Bandh is creating the swarupa or the form of a devata in your body. This is Pindi Bandh. So you make a posture, you make a position of your body, you make a posture of your body in such a manner that it reflects a particular devata. So that the characteristics of the swarup of that devata or devi becomes clear. You say, this is Saraswati standing before me. Just as you see an idol in stone of Saraswati and you say, this is Saraswati, she has a veena, she is riding on a hamsa, she is wearing white Ujjwala clothes, right? She is smiling and she has a book in another hand. Or if you want to see Devi, Durga, then Durga will have a spear in her hand. She'll have many hands, she'll have sword. She will not be smiling. She would be looking fiercely. Now when you take that posture, when you create that image in your body, that is called Pindi Bandha. Pindi is what? Pindi is shape or the body, Vigraha, Pinda. And what is it that you bind? The Swarup of the Devata. That is called Pindi Bandha. So when a dancer takes that position and represents not enact, not movement, not dancing. Today, for instance, if you are going to do a dance on Shiva in a particular Bharatnatyam item, then you are dancing Shiva, then you are doing many things. Here it is only taking the posture. You are representing the face, the body, the posture, maybe the ayudha or the weapon and the vehicle. When you are doing vehicle of the god or the goddess, right? Like Indra rides an Aravat, an elephant. So when you represent all this, a single dancer represents this through her bodily posture, not movement, static posture. That is called Pindi Bandha. When many Pindi Bandhas combine, then there are 4 kinds of Pindi Bandhas. That is a later combination in which there is not much group dancing but only representation of different devatas. So the first thing is a dancer comes and makes a pindi, let us say of Shiva. Another comes, she makes of Parvati. The third comes, she makes of Kartikeya. The fourth comes, she makes of Ganesha. And then they combine in different formations, Lata and Gulma, etc., which are defined, and that is the combination of Pindi Bandha. The combination is not Pindi Bandha. So it is not a bandha of dancers, it's not a group made of dancers, it is a bandha or a capturing of the bhava or the shape, not just the bhava, the shape of the devata, that is called Pindi Bandha. So once this is done on stage, through the human body, then it can be done in wood, mud, stone, कहीं भी हो सकता है ना फिर. Once you have shown it in the body, once you have brought the devata into yourself, into the pindi, then that can be imitated and made into another media. So creating a murti or creating a vigraha or creating a statue or an idol is also part of the Vedic tradition implemented through dance. And that is why dance is the fundamental medium which has given all kinds of shapes and sizes to the figures in Indian sculpture. You see all these murtis on temples? Where do they get their postures from? From the theatre, from dance. The book of which is Natya Shastra. So it is the fundamental postures which create dance. It is like the language of dance, which is given in absolute detail in the Natya Shastra, nowhere else. It is not given in Silapadigaram or Tolkappiyam or any other text. It's given only in Natya Shastra. And then it is followed by so many other texts for more than 2,500 years. This present edition of Natya Shastra was compiled and collected by Bharat Muni in 500 BC. But he was working on the text or the collection of an elder Bharat, a senior Bharat, called Vriddha Bharat, whose text was twice the size, who may have lived 3,000 years ago, that is 1000 BC or whatever. Because the tradition of Vedas is much older, much older. And it is from there that the science of, or the art of, call it whatever you like, it's very rational, discipline, therefore it can be called a science also, and it is very creative, and it is very innovative, so it can be called an art as well. So when the Vidya of Natya developed, then it developed according to certain needs of the people. And it developed along with changes in requirements. When you worship, you do the Vedic Yajna, and in which you do certain things in a certain manner. But when you want to entertain yourself, then you take certain elements out of the Vedic Yajna and create theatre. And theatre is not only for worship, not only for pleasing gods, but for pleasing ourselves, for pleasing everybody else, for pleasing the rich, for the poor, the very poor, the unlearned, and passing on the message and the ideals of knowledge contained in the Vedas to the common man. So the notions of what is dharma, what is adharma, what is karma, what is punarjanma, how you should lead your life, what is purushartha, all these were transmitted through different stories. And these stories were acted again and again. An enactment of these stories is called natya. How is it that great stories are preserved in India today? Great stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata. Not because people are reading the text of Ramayana and Mahabharata, but people know, small children know. Right? If somebody's wife gets angry, then she calls the husband, "You are a Ravana." Right? And this may be a not so highly or not so much educated woman. So this is the common story. It is common knowledge. Who brought this common knowledge to the people? Not the scholars. You don't go and listen to scholars. All these stories are preserved by theatre, by dance, by music, by singing these stories, by enacting these stories. That is why they have survived in India. They have not survived elsewhere. Nowhere else in the world they have survived. Today, 100 years ago, they were played a little bit in China and Japan, but now those China being a communist country doesn't play the stories. In India, it is played. In the West, no. They used to have a great theatre in a country called Greece. But that theatre came to an end. When Christianity came to Greece, it stopped theatre. Because they said, no, theatre is bad. You will not have theatre. Because Christians said that an actor takes a shape which is not his. So he deceives. And who is the great deceiver? Satan. Because Satan became a snake and he whispered into the ears of Eve and said, you should eat the apple. And then there was the great fall. So the Christian fathers, they said, no theatre. You stay as you are. Don't change your shape. Don't put a mask. Don't put another swarupa. So Greek theatre ended in 2nd century AD. This is about 1800 years ago. It's only in last 100 years that they have started reviving it. But they don't know how to revive it. Because these things are preserved through a tradition, through a practice. They are not preserved by books. You can't sing Carnatic music by reading a book. You can't sing ragas by reading Swaramel Kalanidhi. You have to learn it from somebody. And to learn, there has to be a parampara of teachers. And the art has to stay alive. So in India, the art stayed alive. But in the West, Because of theological reasons, religious reasons, it was wiped out. So, all the art which is related to old stories, philosophies, ways of thinking have to be preserved as a living tradition. It has to be learnt now and passed on to others. Books alone cannot preserve them. But how the art was practiced in the past, what were the different features of that art, those are written in a book or what is called the Shastras. So, coming back to Shastra, when we talk of Natya Shastra is the book which gives the most extensive account of how Natya was to be performed. And so it gave a very detailed account of dance. It gave a very detailed account of music. It gave a very detailed account of wearing dresses. Abhinay is of four kinds: Angik, Vachik, Sattvic, Aharya. So there are nearly 4 chapters on Abhinay. Then there are 3 very big chapters on music, 28th, 29th, 31st, and even 32nd can be called a chapter on music and theatre together. So every aspect of performance or performing art is to be found in Natya Shastra alone. There is no other text. It has 36 chapters and 6,000 verses. And people have studied it constantly for the last 2,500 years. At least we have commentaries going back to more than 1,000 years. There were teachers who taught just the Natya Shastra. Of course, they were in constant touch with the practitioners of the art. And the whole series of texts which are written after Natya Shastra constantly refer to Natya Shastra as the repository of the art of theatre, dance and music. They are referring that this comes from, they are not referring to any other text. They are not referring to Silpadikaram. Yes, there is music in Silpadikaram. I have read Silpadikaram in translation. I even assisted once a production of it about 25 years ago in National School of Drama. So there are parts of other texts that describe, for instance, there is a particular thing like music or dance. For instance, there is description of music, some little bit in Valmiki Ramayana. But we don't go to Valmiki Ramayana to find out what is the state of music in ancient India or what was the grammar of music in ancient India. Similarly, you cannot go to any other text except the Natya Shastra in which there is a detailed account of postures, 108 Karanas. Now, more than 50% of those Karanas are lost. No dancer performs them in actual dance. I mean, you can perform them as demonstration, and some people have done wonderful work in trying to show them to teach. But in practice, that has been lost because there was a big disruption in theatre in India also. Theatre in cities could not be performed after 12th century AD. Under the Islamic rule, theatre was also banned. Just as Christians banned theatre in Greece, similarly, Muslims banned theatre in the Indian cities, and wherever they occupied the city, it was banned. There was no arangam, nothing like that, because it was a forbidden art. But it still survived. It survived outside the cities, and it has survived in huge quantity. And we are so lucky to have this whole tradition which is described in our texts. So, after Natshas we have Brihad Deshi, then we have all these commentaries right up to 11th century by various people of Kashmir school, Lollat and Shankok and Nayak and Abhinav, and earlier than that Mammat. So we have all these people who have written. Then in medieval times we have texts, Dasharupakam, and we have so many other texts about music, Sangeet Parijat, Sangeet Ratnavali, and then we have the famous medieval text of 13th century, Sangeet Ratnakara. And we come down to the present times, and in between we have Abhinay Darpan, which is taught to you also, because Abhinay Darpan has account of certain aspects, practical aspects of Abhinay. But all these later texts emphasize one aspect or the other more. Like Nritya Ratnavali is more about Nritya. Sangeet Parijat is more about Sangeet. Sangeet Ratnakar is more about Sangeet. But Natya Shastra is about everything. And they all refer to Natya Shastra. They all remember. There is no other text to which all these texts are referring. You see, if there was some text which was as important as Natya Shastra, then all these people writing for 2000 years would have referred to it. That look, it is taught in such and such place, there are disciples of this tradition, they perform this and this thing, this is how the art is practiced by them. Because there was no such text, therefore they did not. I am talking from hardcore textual evidence. I am not giving you a theory of any kind. I am not trying to push some ideas which may be political in nature, or ideas which may favor one region of India over another. I am only talking about the whole textual tradition as it exists, as it is written, and as it has been also practiced. Because Shastra lives by practice of the art. And the practice of the art constantly refers to the Shastra as a repository of old practices. Now, I have given you this relationship and this development of theatre from the Vedic times later on. I will also talk, perhaps not today, but maybe in the afternoon, as to how this theatre was put into actual practice. When I said that theatre is largely stories, characters, heroes, then what was the ways in which the stories were enacted? You understand? And what were the emotions with which these stories were associated? But before I do that, I'd like to invite some questions. If you have any questions, any